The Galactic Academy's lecture hall buzzed with the chittering, clicking, and humming of a dozen different species. Professor Zix Theta's crystalline form pulsed with irritation as he surveyed the mixed classroom of military cadets. His three eyes focused on the human in the back row. Sarah Chen sat perfectly still, taking notes with mechanical precision. While other students raised tentacles, claws, and appendages to answer questions about tactical theory, she remained silent. Always silent, Cadet Chen. The professor's voice resonated through the translator. Perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts on the Proxima defense strategy? Sarah looked up, her dark eyes meeting his gaze. No, sir. The Vraxian cadet next to her snickered, his scales rippling with amusement. Humans, he whispered to his companion. They send their weakest to learn from us. Professor Zixatheta's form flickered, a sign of annoyance. The assignment specifically asked for alternative approaches to defending against a swarm incursion. You submitted nothing. I submitted my paper, sir. On time. 3 sentences hardly constitute a tactical analysis, cadet. Sarah's expression didn't change. My analysis was complete. The professor pulled up her submission on the holo display. 3 short sentences floated in the air. Proxima defense strategy assumes defensive positioning. Swarm expects this. Attack first, the class erupted in laughter. The Karathi twins flashed their bioluminescent patches in mockery. A Zelani cadet's fur stood on end with mirth. This is exactly why humans shouldn't be admitted to the academy, muttered Vraxtor, the scaled cadet. His species had dominated the Galactic Military Council for centuries. They can barely form coherent strategies, let alone execute them. Sarah continued taking notes as if she hadn't heard. After class, she walked alone through the academy's vast corridors. The architecture accommodated species of all sizes, soaring ceilings for the winged Altarians, water channels for the aquatic Bendathi, and variable gravity zones for the delicate whisper folk. Sarah kept to the human standard paths, her footsteps steady and measured. Hey, quiet human. She didn't turn around. Vraxtor and 3 other Vraxian cadets caught up with her, their natural armor clicking with each step. I'm talking to you, Vraxtor said, moving to block her path. At 8 feet tall, he towered over her 5'6" frame. You embarrass the academy with your presence. 3 sentences, really? Sarah looked up at him. Excuse me. No, I don't think I will. His companions spread out, forming a semicircle. You humans think you're special because you survived first contact with the Devourers 50 years ago. But luck isn't skill. I need to get to my next class. Vraxtor's claw shot out, knocking her data pad from her hands. It clattered across the floor. Oops, better pick that up, quiet human. Sarah bent down to retrieve it. As she stood, Vraxtor shoved her shoulder, sending her stumbling. Weak, he sneered. You can't even stand properly. How do you expect to fight? Sarah straightened, brushed off her uniform, and picked up her data pad. Without a word, she walked around them and continued down the corridor. Coward, Vraxtor called after her. This is why humans will never earn respect in the galaxy. In the simulation chamber that afternoon, Sarah stood with her assigned squad for the monthly combat assessment. The teams were randomly selected, 2 Vraxians, a Karathi, a Bendathi, and a mobility suit, and her. Great, one of the Vraxians muttered. We got the mute human. The Karathi's patches flickered nervously. I heard she's never scored above minimum passing in combat sims. Because she does nothing, the other Vraxian said. Just follows orders, never takes initiative. We're going to fail this assessment. The Bendathi's suit speakers crackled. Perhaps we should request a replacement. No time, the first Vraxian said as the simulation chamber's walls shimmered and transformed into a war-torn cityscape. We'll have to carry her. The assessment parameters appeared in their HUDs. Eliminate hostile forces. Protect civilian evacuation. Time limit 30 minutes. Standard formation, the first Vraxian declared, assuming command. I'll take point. Karathi, you're our sniper. Bendathi, crowd control. Other Vraxian, watch our 6 human. Just try not to get in the way. Sarah nodded once. The simulation began. Holographic civilians ran through the streets as enemy forces. Simulated Devourer drones descended from the sky. The squad moved forward in their assigned formation. Within minutes, they were pinned down. The Vraxian leader had charged into an obvious ambush. The Karathi sniper couldn't get clear shots through the urban terrain. The Bendathi's crowd control methods caused civilian casualties. The rear Vraxian kept leaving his position to glory chase. "We need a new plan," the Karathi shouted as simulated plasma fire rained down on their position. "I'm open to suggestions," the Vraxian leader snarled. Sarah remained silent, crouched behind cover. She watched the drone patterns, counted their numbers, tracked civilian movement. Her fingers moved across her weapon, making tiny adjustments. "Human. Do something," the Bendathi gurgled. Sarah looked at the squad leader. "Permission to engage?" "Yes, whatever." "Just help." Sarah moved. To the others, what happened next seemed impossible. The quiet human who never spoke in class, who always scored bare minimum, who took abuse without response. She became something else entirely. She didn't run between cover like they'd been taught. She flowed, each movement calculated, each step deliberate. Her weapon barked in controlled bursts, not the spray-and-pray panic fire of a cadet, but the measured rhythm of someone who knew exactly where each shot would land. Drones fell from the sky in precise sequence. She wasn't aiming for center mass like the textbooks taught. She was hitting exact weak points, joints, sensor arrays, targets the others hadn't even identified. "How?" the Karathi started. "Southwest building, 3rd floor, 2 shooters," Sarah said, not breaking her movement. "Civilians trapped in the basement." "Bendathi, can your suit punch through the east wall?" "Yes." "Do it. Get them out." Karathi, suppress those shooters. "Don't kill. There are civilians on the 2nd floor." "How do you know?" "Heat signatures through the damaged walls." "Move!" They moved. Suddenly, Sarah's quiet directions were reshaping the battlefield. She wasn't commanding, just observing, suggesting, coordinating. The squad leader was still technically in charge, but everyone was following Sarah's tactical calls. "3 drones approaching from the north," she said, sliding a fresh power cell into her weapon. "They'll try to flank while we're extracting civilians." "I don't see," the rear Vraxian started. 3 drones appeared exactly where she'd predicted. Sarah was already in position. 3 shots. 3 drones down. "Civilian extraction complete," the Bendathi reported. "Fallback route compromised," Sarah noted. "New path." She threw a smoke grenade in what seemed like the wrong direction. "That's not," the squad leader began. The smoke revealed laser targeting systems they hadn't detected. The safe route had been a trap. They followed Sarah's path instead. With 5 minutes remaining, they reached the extraction point. The civilian count was perfect. 0 friendly casualties. Enemy forces eliminated with surgical precision. The simulation ended. The scores appeared on the display. The squad had achieved the highest rating in Academy history for that scenario. "How?" the Vraxian leader asked, staring at Sarah. In class you never." Sarah was already heading for the exit. "Good work, everyone." "Wait," the Karathi called. "You have to tell us how you knew," but she was gone. That night, in her small dormitory room, Sarah video called home. Her mother's face appeared on the screen, weathered but smiling. "How's school, sweetheart?" "It's fine, Mom." "Making friends?" Sarah thought of the day's events. "A few. Are you keeping up with your studies?" "Yes, Mom." "Good. Remember what your father always said?" Sarah smiled slightly. "Never show your cards until the pot's worth winning." "That's my girl." "The Academy Combat Assessment is coming up, isn't it? The big one?" "Next month. Think you're ready?" Sarah looked at the medal on her desk. One most cadets didn't know existed. The Star of Terra, awarded for exceptional valor during the Devourer incursion on Mars Station. She'd been 15. "I'm ready." Her mother's smile was knowing. "Give them hell, baby. Just like your dad would have." After the call ended, Sarah returned to her homework. Tomorrow she'd sit quietly in class again. She'd submit short answers. She'd accept the mockery and the shoving and the disrespect, because none of them understood the first rule of human warfare. Never let the enemy know your true capabilities until it's too late for them to adapt. The monthly assessment had been a mistake. She'd shown too much, but they'd needed her help and she couldn't let her squad fail because of their prejudices. She pulled up the Academy's records on her data pad. In 1 month, the final combat assessment would determine military rankings for the entire graduating class. The top performers would lead joint species operations across the galaxy. For 50 years, no human had placed in the top 100. Sarah looked at the assessment parameters. Urban warfare, ship-to-ship combat, ground tactics, swarm defense, all scenarios she'd run 1,000 times before the Academy. All battles she'd fought when the Devourers came to Mars, when she was just a teenager with her father's rifle and her mother's prayers. The other species thought humans were weak because they'd only seen Earth's diplomats and scientists. They didn't know about the children of Mars Station, who'd held the line when the advanced tactics classroom smelled of ozone and burnt electronics. Professor Krexmal, a 6-armed Threnody, manipulated multiple holodisplays simultaneously while lecturing on multidimensional warfare. Who can tell me the primary weakness of the Devourer swarm? 3 of his arms gestured at the class while the others continued working. Dozens of appendages shot up. Sarah Chen kept writing in her notebook. Cadet Vraxtor, the professor acknowledged. Their hive mind structure, sir. Disrupt the command node and the drones become disorganized, or a textbook answer. Correct, but incomplete. Krexmal's compound eyes swiveled. Anyone else? The Altarian cadet spread her wings. They're vulnerable during their feeding cycle when they process biomass. Better. Still missing critical elements. His gaze settled on the quiet human in the 3rd row. Cadet Chen, you studied the Mars Station incident in your application essay. Share your insights. Sarah looked up from her notes. I'd prefer not to, sir. A ripple of whispers went through the class. The Mars Station incident was legendary, a small human colony that had somehow survived a full Devourer assault when entire fleets had failed. This isn't a request, Cadet. Sarah set down her pen. The Devourers have no weakness. The class erupted in scoffs and chittering laughter. Silence. Krexmal commanded. Explain. Weaknesses can be exploited systematically, Sarah said quietly. The Devourers adapt, destroy their command node, they evolve distributed processing. Attack during feeding, they change their consumption patterns. They're not weak. They're just, she paused, predictable. And how does that help us? It doesn't. Sarah picked up her pen again. May I continue my notes, sir? Krexmal's arm stopped moving. You survived Mars Station. You were there when the Devourers breached the colony. How did humanity hold them off? We didn't, sir. We just didn't die when we were supposed to. Before the professor could probe further, the emergency klaxon sounded. Not the steady pulse of a drill, but the sharp staccato burst that meant real danger. Attention all cadets. The Academy's AI boomed. Unknown vessels detected in system. Report to designated shelter areas. This is not a drill. Chaos erupted. Cadets scrambled for the exits, their training forgotten in the face of real danger. The Academy was in neutral space, protected by treaties. No one attacked here. Sarah closed her notebook methodically, placed it in her bag, and stood. Cadet Chen, Professor Krexmal called. Where are you going? Armory, sir. The shelter areas are in the opposite direction. Sarah paused at the door. I know. She moved through the panicking crowds with purpose. Other cadets pushed and shoved, desperate to reach safety. Sarah slipped through gaps, always moving forward, always calm. The armory was supposedly secured. Biometric locks, guard posts, restricted access. Sarah reached the first checkpoint to find the guards gone, probably heading for shelters themselves. She placed her hand on the biometric scanner. It flashed red. Access denied. Sarah pulled out her datapad and connected it to the scanner's port. Her fingers flew across the interface. Code scrolled past. Not standard Academy programming, but something older, harder. Military override protocols that shouldn't exist in a student's device. The scanner turned green. Inside, she equipped herself with practiced efficiency. Not the training weapons cadets usually used, but live ammunition. Real armor, combat-grade equipment that most students wouldn't touch until after graduation. What are you doing here? Sarah turned to find Zara Kim, another human cadet standing in the doorway. Unlike Sarah, Zara was popular, outgoing, top of the class in theoretical studies, the kind of human the other species pointed to as a model student. Getting ready, Sarah replied, checking the charge on a plasma rifle. Ready for what? We should be in the shelters. Sarah handed her a weapon. Know how to use this? In theory, but theory's over. Sarah moved to the ammunition stores. How many other humans are at the Academy right now? Maybe 12. Why does that matter? Because we're about to find out if the rest of the galaxy learned the right lessons from Mars Station. Sarah filled her belt with power cells. Or if they just learned to fear the wrong things. Explosions rocked the Academy. The lights flickered, then switched to emergency power. Those aren't warning shots, Zara said, her academic confidence wavering. No, they're not. Sarah headed for the door. You can go to the shelters. Probably safer. Probably. Depends on what they're after. Sarah paused. But if I were attacking the academy, I'd hit the shelter areas first. Biggest concentration of targets. Zara's face paled. That's a war crime. Only if someone survives to report it. Another explosion closer this time. Sarah could hear plasma fire in the distance. Not the organized volleys of a defensive action, but the scattered bursts of panic. I'm coming with you, Zara decided. Can you shoot? I qualified expert in simulations. Simulations don't scream. Or bleed or beg. Sarah's voice was flat. When you shoot something real, it doesn't despawn. It dies, and sometimes it takes a long time dying. I understand. No, you don't, but you might. They moved through the academy's corridors. Sarah led, weapon raised, checking corners with an economy of motion that spoke of muscle memory, not classroom training. Zara followed, trying to mimic her movements. They found the first bodies near the main plaza. 3 Vraxian security guards, their natural armor cracked and burned. Sarah knelt beside them, checking for signs of life. Nothing. Oh God, Zara whispered. Sarah examined the wounds. Plasma burns. But look at the pattern. She pointed to the scoring on the walls. They're hurting people. Driving them toward... A scream echoed from the east wing. Then another. Then dozens. The shelters. Zara finished. Sarah stood. We need to... Human. They spun to find Vraxtor and 5 other cadets stumbling toward them. His scales were blackened, one arm hanging useless. The others looked worse, wounded, terrified, their academy training useless against real violence. What are you doing here? He gasped. The shelters are compromised, Sarah finished. Who's attacking? I don't know. They came out of nowhere. Ships we've never seen. They're killing everyone. Sarah studied the group. 2 Vraxians, a Karathi, 2 Zalani, and a badly injured Bendathi, whose suit was leaking fluid. Can you fight? She asked. We're cadets. One of the Zalani protested. We're not ready for... Another explosion closer. The sound of plasma fire was getting louder. Ready or not, they're coming, Sarah said. We can run and die tired, or we can fight and maybe live. You? Vraxtor laughed bitterly. The quiet human who can't even answer questions in class? You're going to fight? Sarah didn't respond. She was looking past them, calculating angles, counting heartbeats. Down, she shouted, shoving Zara aside. Plasma bolts seared through the space where they'd been standing. 3 figures in black combat armor rounded the corner, weapons raised. Sarah moved. 3 shots. 3 kills. Clean headshots through the gaps in their armor. So fast it seemed like one continuous sound. The attackers dropped before they could fire again. The cadets stared in shock. Sarah was already moving forward, checking the bodies. Modified Terran armor. Devour biosignatures on the weapons. She looked up. They're not here to conquer. They're here to feed. That's impossible, the Karathi said. The Devourers were destroyed at Mars Station. The humans stopped one hive, Sarah corrected. There were always others waiting, learning. She pulled a communication device from one of the bodies. Static and clicking sounds emerged. Not random, but patterned. They're coordinating, she said. Multiple squads. They've taken the shelter areas, the communication center, probably the hangars. How do you know? Because it's what I'd do. Sarah stood. Who else knows you're alive? What? Did you check in at the shelters? Does anyone expect you there? No, Vraxtor said. We were cut off before. Good. Then they won't look for you. Sarah turned to Zara. Remember the Kelvar theorem from Advanced Tactics? The one about asymmetric warfare? But that's for space combat. Principles are the same. Small force, big enemy, limited resources. Sarah gestured to the dead attackers. We have their weapons, their armor, their comm frequencies. What does Kelvar say about enemy assets? Zara's eyes widened. Turn them into liabilities. Smart human, Sarah said. It might have been a compliment. Help the others suit up. Vraxians take the large armor. Modify for your builds. Bendathi will need to patch your suit first. Why should we listen to you? One of the Zalani demanded. Another scream echoed through the academy. Then silence. Because I know what's coming, Sarah said simply, and you don't want to face it alone. The group looked at each other, then at the bodies, then at the quiet human who'd killed 3 soldiers before they could blink. "What do we do?" Fraxtor asked. Sarah almost smiled. "We remind them why the Devourers really lost at Mars Station." "Which is?" "They thought they were hunting prey." She checked her weapons charge. They didn't realize they were walking into a trap. As she began outlining her plan, using terms from their textbooks but applying them in ways their professors never imagined, the cadets realized something. The quiet human who never raised her hand in class had been holding back more than they could have imagined. And now, with lives on the line, she was finally showing them why humanity had earned its place among the stars. The Academy's maintenance tunnels were never meant for combat. They were cramped, dark, and filled with pipes that leaked coolant and steam. For most species, they were a nightmare to navigate. For Sarah Chen, they were home. "Watch the third pipe," she whispered, guiding Vraxtor's bulk through a narrow passage. "It's superheated." The Vraxian squeezed through, his scales scraping against metal. Behind them, the other cadets followed in single file, a ragtag group wearing stolen enemy armor, carrying weapons they'd only fired in simulations. "How do you know these tunnels so well?" Zara asked. "First thing I did when I arrived," Sarah replied. "Map every corridor, every access point, every blind spot." "Why?" "Because Mars Station fell when they came through the maintenance systems. Dad always said." She stopped herself. They'd been moving for 20 minutes, following Sarah's lead through the labyrinth beneath the Academy. Above them, they could hear explosions, plasma fire, and worse, the screams that suddenly cut off. "Here," Sarah said, stopping at a junction. She pulled out the enemy communicator and listened to the clicking patterns. "They're moving captives to the main auditorium." "Captives?" The injured Bendathi's translator gurgled. "Not killing?" "Not yet," Sarah's voice was grim. "The Devourers don't just feed on biomass. They're selective. They process fear, adrenaline. The biochemistry of terror makes the feeding more efficient." "That's sick," one of the Zelani said. "That's evolution." Sarah checked her weapon. "They learned from Mars. Quick kills waste potential. Better to harvest slowly." "You sound like you admire them," Vraxtor accused. "I respect them," Sarah corrected. "Admiration is for beauty. Respect is for things that can kill you." She turned to the group. "The auditorium has 4 main entrances, 2 service doors, and 1 emergency exit. They'll guard the main points but probably ignore the service areas. Too small for most species. Too small for us too," the Karathi pointed out. "For you." Sarah looked at Zara. "But not for humans. You want us to go in alone?" "Not alone. You'll have backup." Sarah pulled out several devices from her pack, small cylindrical objects that looked homemade. "Plasma charges. Low yield but in an enclosed space. Go, those aren't Academy issue," Vraxtor observed. "No, they're not." Sarah handed them to Zara. "Remember the Kelvar theorem. What's the third principle?" "The enemy's strength becomes their weakness," Zara recited. "The Devourers bunch their captives together. Makes them easier to guard, easier to process. But it also makes them vulnerable to area effects," Zara finished. "But if we use plasma charges, we'll kill the captives too." "Not these." Sarah showed her the settings. "They're modified. EMP burst followed by flashbang. Devourers use bioelectric fields for close communication. Disrupt that, and they're blind and deaf for 30 seconds. 45, actually. I've tested it." The group exchanged glances. When had the quiet cadet been testing homemade weapons against Devourer physiology? "The rest of us?" Fraxtor asked. "You'll be at the main entrances. The charges will drive them toward you. Bottleneck formation. Use the doorways as kill zones." She drew quick diagrams on her datapad. "Karathi, you're our best shot. Elevated position here. Priority targets are the commanders. They'll have red markings on their armor." "How do you know their command structure?" Sarah just looked at him. The Karathi didn't ask again. "What about you?" Fraxtor pressed. "I'll be handling the emergency exit." "Alone?" "Yes, that's suicide." "If they run, they won't run." Sarah's voice was certain. "Devourers don't retreat from prey. It's not in their psychology. They'll rush the threats, try to overwhelm us with numbers." She paused. "That's what we're counting on." They spent the next 10 minutes preparing. Sarah showed each cadet weak points in Devourer armor, firing patterns that would maximize damage, how to reload under pressure. She was patient but precise, correcting grips and stances with an instructor's eye. "You've done this before," Vraxtor said. It wasn't a question. We all have our stories, Sarah replied. Yours is about honor and glory. Mine is about survival. They reached the service corridor beneath the auditorium. Through the grates, they could hear the sounds. Hundreds of beings crowded together, crying, pleading. And over it all, the clicking communication of their captors. Sarah listened intently. 40 devourers. Maybe 50. They're preparing for row or processing. We can't fight 50, the Zilani whispered. Mars Station fought thousands, Sarah said, with mining equipment and improvised weapons. You have military hardware and the element of surprise. Mars Station also had soldiers. No, Sarah's voice was quiet. Mars Station had families, mothers, fathers, children. She looked at each of them. The soldiers died in the first wave. It was the civilians who held the line. She turned to Zara. 2 minutes after you deploy the charges. No matter what you hear, what you see. 2 minutes. Zara nodded, gripping the charges tightly. Everyone else, positions. Remember, controlled bursts, watch your ammunition, keep the doorways clear for crossfire. Sarah started to move away. Wait, Vraxtor called. What if this doesn't work? Sarah looked back. Then you'll die knowing you tried. That's better than dying in a cage. They separated. Sarah moved through the tunnels with purpose, every step calculated. She could hear her father's voice in her memory. Fear is data, baby girl. It tells you what matters. Use it, don't let it use you. She'd been 14 when he'd said that. 2 hours before the Devourers breached the Mars Station perimeter. The emergency exit was exactly where the schematic said it would be. Sarah took position, checked her weapons, and waited. Through the walls, she could hear Zara and the Bendathi moving into position. The Bendathi's suit had been patched, but it still leaked. They'd left a trail. The Devourers would smell it eventually. 1 minute. Sarah breathed steadily. In, out, in, out. The way her mother had taught her in the tunnels of Mars. When the air recyclers had failed and every breath mattered. 30 seconds. The clicking got louder. More agitated. They'd noticed something. 10 seconds. Sarah heard Zara's voice, faint through the walls. For Earth, for Mars, for everyone you've taken. The charges detonated. The explosion wasn't large. Sarah had been precise about that. But the EMP pulse ripped through the auditorium, followed immediately by blinding light and deafening sound. The clicking communication turned to screeches of pain and confusion. Then came the plasma fire, short controlled bursts from the doorways. The cadets following her instructions, turning the entrances into killing fields. Sarah counted in her head. The Devourers would be disoriented for 45 seconds. After that, they'd adapt, regroup, overwhelm the cadet positions through sheer numbers, unless they had somewhere else to go. She heard them before she saw them. The scrambling of claws on metal. The panic breathing of predators suddenly turned prey. The emergency exit burst open and Devourers poured out. Sarah opened fire. The first 3 dropped before they knew she was there. The next 2 managed to raise their weapons before precise shots took them in the joints, dropping them screaming. More came, pushing past their fallen, trying to escape the kill zone inside only to find death waiting outside. Sarah moved between positions she'd mapped while the others prepared. Fire displaced fire again, never from the same angle twice. To the Devourers, it must have seemed like a squad, not a single human. Her weapon clicked empty. She dropped it, pulled her secondary. Kept firing. A Devourer commander, red markings just as she'd predicted, tried to rally the others. Sarah put 2 shots through its head, then rolled to avoid the return fire from its guards. Pain flared across her ribs. Plasma burn. Not deep, but enough to slow her. She kept moving. More Devourers fell. Some tried to retreat back inside, only to meet the concentrated fire from the doorways. Others pushed forward, desperate to escape. Sarah let them come, drew them out, made them bunch up in the narrow exit. Then she triggered the real surprise, charges she'd planted while the others took positions. The explosion collapsed the exit, crushing a dozen Devourers and trapping the rest inside with the cadets. Silence fell. Sarah limped toward the auditorium, reloading as she walked. Inside, she found organized chaos. The cadets held their positions, weapons trained on the few Devourers who'd survived. Captives huddled in groups, shocked but alive. Clear? She called. Clear! Vraxtor responded. His armor was scorched, but he was standing. Captives, minor injuries. No casualties. Sarah nodded and immediately began checking the fallen devourers, putting rounds into any that still moved. The cadets watched in shock as she methodically ensured each enemy was dead. "They're already down," the Karathi protested. "Down isn't dead," Sarah replied. "And dead doesn't always stay that way with devourers. They can regenerate from wounds that would kill most species. Always confirm the kill." She found what she was looking for on the commander's body, a communication node, more sophisticated than the handheld units. She accessed it, listening to the chatter. "Problem?" Fraxtor asked, noting her expression. "This was just one squad," Sarah said. "There are 6 more in the academy. And they've already taken the hangars, so we're trapped?" Sarah looked at the node again, then at the cadets who'd just survived their first real combat. They were scared, hurt, but still standing. "Still ready, no," she said. "We're not trapped." "Then what are we?" Zara asked. "We're the reason they're going to regret coming here." The Academy's command center was a fortress of technology and strategic importance. 3 levels of security, automated defenses, and walls designed to withstand orbital bombardment. It had fallen in 12 minutes. Sarah crouched in a ventilation shaft, watching Devourer soldiers patrol the corridors below. The command center's capture meant they controlled communications, sensors, and the defensive grid. Any distress signal, any call for help would be intercepted and blocked. "I count 22, Zara whispered beside her. The other human had proven adaptable, picking up combat rhythms with the speed of someone who understood that learning meant living. 24, Sarah corrected, pointing to shadows in the corner. "They're rotating guards every 15 minutes. Pattern suggests what? They're not just holding it. They're using it." Sarah pulled back from the grate. Someone's accessing the Academy's databases. Behind them, the mixed group of cadets waited. Their number had grown. Survivors who'd heard the fighting at the auditorium and sought them out. 24 now, different species united by desperation and Sarah's quiet leadership. "Why databases?" Fraxtor asked. His respect for the human had evolved from grudging to genuine. What could they want with student records? "Not student records," Sarah said. "Training simulations, combat scenarios, tactical doctrine for every major military in the Galactic Alliance." She looked at them meaningfully. "Everything we learn here becomes standard procedure for our species' forces." The Karathi's patches flickered in alarm. "They're studying our weaknesses, learning how we think," Sarah confirmed. "The Devourers aren't mindless anymore. Mars taught them that raw force fails against determined resistance. So they're evolving, becoming strategic. We have to stop them," a new voice said. Commander Thresh, a Vraxian instructor who'd survived the initial attack, pushed forward. Half his scales were burned away, but he still carried himself with military bearing. "Cadet Chen, I'm taking command of this operation." Sarah studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, sir. What are your orders?" Thresh outlined a plan. A frontal assault using standard Alliance tactics, covering fire, breach and clear, textbook execution. The cadets listened with growing unease. "Sir," Sarah said when he finished, "that won't work." His eyes narrowed. "I've been studying tactics since before you were born, human." "Yes, sir. And they've been downloading those same tactics for the past hour." She pulled out her data pad, showing him the power usage from the command center. "See these spikes? Data transfer. Massive amounts. They know exactly how Alliance forces are trained to assault fortified positions." "Then what do you suggest?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried no challenge, just certainty. "We don't act like Alliance forces. We act like humans, meaning we fight dirty." Over the next hour, Sarah transformed the cadets into something their professors would never recognize. She taught them to move in patterns that defied military doctrine, to use weapons in ways that violated every manual. "Plasma rifles can overload if you remove the safety protocols," she explained, demonstrating on her weapon. "Turns them into bombs with a 10-second delay." "That's insane," Azalani protested. "You'd lose your weapon. Better than losing your life." Sarah handed the modified rifle to Zara. "Besides, weapons are just tools. Plenty more on the bodies." She showed them how to use the Academy's own systems against the invaders, how maintenance panels could become improvised explosives, how the environmental controls could flood sections with coolant gas, how the artificial gravity could be weaponized. "None of this is in the manuals," Commander Thresh observed. "No, sir," Sarah agreed. "That's the point. Where did you learn all this?" Sarah's hands paused in their work. Mars Station had a library. After the siege, I read everything: military history, tactical analysis, guerrilla warfare. But the most important book was my dad's journal. She resumed working. He wrote down everything that actually worked versus what should have worked. What happened to him? He held the line so others could escape. Her voice was steady. Took 17 devourers with him. They moved into position. Sarah's plan was chaos given form. Multiple simultaneous breaches from directions the tactical program said were impossible. Cadets crawling through sewage pipes, dropping from ceiling panels, emerging from floor grates. Remember, Sarah said over the comm, they expect military precision. Give them human unpredictability. If it feels wrong, it's probably right. That makes no sense, someone complained. Welcome to humanity, Sarah muttered. The attack began with the lights. Sarah had rigged the power grid to strobe, not regularly but in random patterns that disrupted both electronic sensors and biological vision. The Devourers, prepared for a coordinated assault, found themselves fighting shadows. Vraxtor came through the main door, the obvious attack point, alone and roaring, drawing fire. But he wasn't attacking. He was running, leading a trail of overloading plasma rifles that turned the entrance into a chain of explosions. The Karathi sniper, trained for precision, instead fired wild patterns that made no tactical sense until the seemingly random shots herded Devourers into kill zones where modified environmental systems released clouds of supercooled gas. Zara and 3 others erupted from the floor, firing upward through grates, an angle no military manual covered because no sane soldier would position themselves in a sewer to fight. Sarah came through the ceiling, but not where overhead attacks typically originated. She'd mapped the structural weak points, choosing a corner where the armor was thinnest but the angle was worst. It should have been suicide. Instead, it put her directly behind their command post. The Devourer officer managing the data transfer turned just as Sarah's knife found the gap in its armor. Crude, personal, nothing like the clean plasma kills of modern warfare, but silent. They're in the system, one Devourer screeched, alerting others. Sarah was already at the console, her fingers flying over controls. Not trying to stop the download, that was expected. Instead, she was adding to it, flooding their systems with human media. Movies, books, music, millions of files hiding the virus she'd written during their planning. What are you doing? Commander Thresh demanded over comms. Giving them what they want, Sarah replied. Everything about human culture, including our gift for computer viruses. The Devourers were adapting quickly, rallying despite the chaotic attack. Their return fire grew more organized, more lethal. 2 cadets fell, a Bendathi caught in crossfire, a young Vraxian who'd pushed too far forward. Pull back. Thresh ordered. Not yet, Sarah said. 30 more seconds. We don't have a Devourer, commander rounded the corner, weapon aimed at Sarah's back. She spun, but too slow. The shot was already lined up. Vraxtor's massive form slammed into the Devourer, scales against chitin, raw strength against engineered biology. They went down in a tangle of limbs and fury. Whatever you're doing, do it faster, he roared. Sarah turned back to the console. Her virus was elegant in its simplicity. The Devourers wanted to understand human tactics. She'd give them every conflicting military doctrine humanity had ever conceived. Sun Tzu next to Clausewitz, guerrilla warfare beside conventional doctrine, terrorist tactics mixed with peacekeeping protocols, centuries of human conflict all contradicting each other. Done. She grabbed her weapon as the console sparked and died. All units fall back, Thresh commanded. They retreated in disorder, or what looked like disorder. Sarah had drilled them on this too. Chaos with purpose, every stumbling step taking them toward preset positions. The Devourers pursued, their coordination beginning to falter as the corrupted data hit their shared network. Commands contradicted themselves. Strategies clashed. For a species that relied on unified thought, the virus was cognitive poison. Now, Sarah said quietly. The cadets turned and fired from positions that made no tactical sense but perfect practical sense. Crossfire from angles that shouldn't exist, using cover that wasn't cover, fighting in ways that every military manual said were wrong, but working. The remaining Devourers fell back to the command center, sealing the doors. Trapped now, but still dangerous. We did it, someone breathed. No, Sarah said, checking her weapon. We just made them desperate. And desperate enemies are the most dangerous. An explosion rocked the corridor. The Devourers were destroying the command center rather than let it be retaken. "They're suiciding," Thresh shouted. "Everyone back!" Sarah didn't move. She was counting under her breath, watching the structural damage. "Chen, that's an order." "The blast pattern's wrong," she said. "They're not destroying it. They're—" The floor beneath the command center collapsed, not from the explosion but from precisely placed charges. The Devourers dropped through, escaping into the maintenance levels below. "They're learning," Sarah said with something like respect. "Unpredictability, sacrifice, misdirection." She looked at the others. "They're becoming more human." "That's terrifying," Zara said. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "It is." She turned to Commander Thresh. "They'll regroup in the hangar. Try to escape with the intelligence they gathered. We can't let that happen." "Agreed. I'll organize a defensive—" "No!" Sarah's voice was firm. "Defense lets them choose the terms. We need to attack. Hard fast before they adapt further. You're a cadet. I'm giving the orders here." The Academy's weapons research lab was off limits to cadets. Behind 3-foot-thick blast doors, experimental weapons and classified prototypes waited for wars. That might never come, Sarah. Cut through the door in 4 minutes using mining. Charges she'd improvised from cleaning. Supplies. "This is completely illegal," Commander Thresh noted, though he didn't try to stop her. "So is attacking a neutral academy," Sarah replied, stepping through the smoking hole. "Laws are for people who plan to live long enough to be prosecuted." The lab was a treasure trove of military innovation. Weapons that bent physics, armor that theorized new forms of protection, devices whose purposes weren't immediately clear. Sarah ignored the showpieces, heading straight for a dusty corner where older equipment gathered. She pulled out crates marked with warnings in a dozen languages. "What are those?" Zara asked. "Failures," Sarah said. "Weapons that didn't meet Alliance standards. Too unpredictable, too dangerous, too human." She opened a crate to reveal spherical devices covered in warning labels. "Gravity mines. Supposed to create localized black holes. Worked about half the time. And the other half? Random gravitational pulses. Could crush you or fling you into orbit. Engineers called them unusable." Sarah pocketed several. Engineers never had to fight Devourers. The cadets spread out, gathering equipment under Sarah's direction. She had them ignore the precise, reliable weapons in favor of the chaotic prototypes. Things that shouldn't exist, much less be used in combat. Sonic disruptors that might liquefy your bones or might play music. Plasma weapons with no safety features. Armor that phases you partially out of reality. Sarah loaded a cart with impossibilities. Everything they teach us not to use. "Because they'll kill us too," Vraxtor pointed out. "Maybe. But definitely we'll kill them first." Sarah found what she was really looking for. A case marked with biohazard symbols. "Perfect. What is that?" "Nano-warfare prototype. Microscopic robots designed to eat through Devourer chitin." She checked the containment seals. "Banned because they sometimes forgot to stop eating. That's insane." "Yes," Sarah secured the case. "That's why it'll work." The explosion in the distance shook the lab. The Devourers were moving faster than expected. "Time to go," Sarah announced. "Grab what you can carry. If it looks safe, leave it. If it looks like it'll kill you, take 2. They loaded up with the rejects of military science. Weapons that violated treaties. Armor that defied physics. Devices whose instruction manuals were mostly warnings. "I need the 6 best shots," Sarah said as they prepared to move out. 6 cadets stepped forward, including the Karathi sniper. Sarah handed each of them a single bullet. Not a power cell or plasma cartridge, but an actual projectile round. Ancient technology by Galactic standards. "What are these?" the Karathi asked. "Insurance," Sarah said. "Kinetic penetrators with unstable cores. 1 shot, 1 kill, no shields can stop them. But the recoil will probably break your arm and the rifle might explode." "Why would we use these?" "Because the Devourers won't expect them. Their armor is designed for energy weapons, not primitive projectiles moving at relativistic speeds." She looked at each sniper. 1 shot. Make it count. Save it for something important. They moved through the academy using routes that shouldn't exist, maintenance shafts too small for most species, sewage systems that required environmental suits, structural spaces between walls. Sarah led them like she lived in these passages for years. "Contact ahead," one of the scouts reported. "Devourer patrol." 6 units. Perfect, Sarah said. Time to test the gravity mines. But you said they only work half the time. I'm counting on it. Sarah armed one of the spheres. Predictable weapons create predictable battles. Chaos creates opportunities. She rolled the mine down the corridor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality hiccuped. 2 devourers were instantly compressed into spheres the size of marbles. One was flung through the ceiling with enough force to puncture 3 decks. 2 others found themselves suddenly weightless, floating helplessly. The last one watched its lower half stretch like taffy, while its upper half remained normal. The floating devourers were easy targets. The stretched one died screaming. The cadets stared in horrified fascination. That's... Someone started wrong, cruel, unnatural. Sarah was already moving. Yes, it's also effective. The devourers evolved to counter our tactics. Hard to evolve when you don't know what killed you. They encountered 2 more patrols before reaching the hangar level. Each time Sarah deployed different prototype weapons. Sonic disruptors that turned one group into liquid, phasing rounds that materialized inside armor, nanoswarms that reduced devourers to their component atoms in seconds. This isn't warfare, Commander Thresh said quietly. This is madness. Mars Station didn't have rules, Sarah replied. We had families to protect. You fight clean when you can afford to lose. You fight dirty when losing means everyone dies. The hangar doors were sealed and defended. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see devourer forces loading equipment onto their assault ships. Dozens of them, maybe more. Too many, Fraxtor assessed. Even with these weapons, we can't fight that many in open ground. Sarah studied the hangar layout on her datapad. We don't need to fight them. We just need to keep them here. She turned to the group. Who's good with explosives? Several hands raised. Not Alliance explosives. I mean really good. Improvised, unstable, probably shouldn't work explosives. Fewer hands. Sarah outlined her plan. It was insane by any conventional standard. Using the Academy's own fuel systems as a weapon, turning the hangar into a massive bomb. But not to destroy it. That was expected. Instead, she wanted to use controlled explosions to seal every exit while venting specific sections to space. Trap them inside, then selectively decompress sections. They'll have to choose, stay and suffocate or run into kill zones. She marked positions on the schematic. We'll mine the kill zones with everything we've got. Make every step forward cost them. What about their ships? That's where our snipers come in. Sarah looked at the 6 she'd armed. Those kinetic rounds will punch through ship hulls. Hit the right spots and their engines become bombs. You want us to shoot through the hangar walls? The Karathi asked. No, I want you to shoot from outside. Sarah smiled grimly. Hope you brought mag boots. 20 minutes later, 6 cadets clung to the Academy's outer hull, looking down at the hangar through its transparent ceiling. Below, devourers loaded their stolen data, unaware of the danger above. Inside, Sarah's team moved into position. She'd kept the most dangerous weapons for herself. The nano-warfare canisters, gravity mines with deliberately damaged safeties, and something she'd found that even she wasn't sure about. Everyone ready? She asked over comms. A chorus of confirmations, nervous but determined. Remember, chaos is our ally. If something goes wrong, adapt. If a weapon fails, improvise. If you see an opportunity, take it. She paused. And if you die, take as many with you as possible. Inspiring, Zara muttered. Inspiration is for speeches. This is survival. Sarah armed the first charges. Execute. The hangar became hell. Explosions sealed the exits as planned, but the devourer's response was faster than expected. They immediately began cutting through walls with plasma torches. Sarah released the first nanoswarm, watching it consume the cutting teams in seconds before burning out. Selective decompression began. Devourers scrambled for emergency suits only to find them sabotaged. Sarah had thought of everything. Some tried to reach their ships running into kill zones where gravity fluctuated wildly, where sonic weapons liquefied armor, where reality itself became unreliable. The snipers fired. Kinetic rounds punched through the transparent aluminum ceiling, through ship hulls into engine cores. The first ship exploded, taking 2 others with it. The second managed to lift off before its reactor went critical, crashing into the hangar wall and creating a new breach. They're adapting, someone shouted. Forming defensive positions. Good, Sarah said. Static positions make better targets. She deployed the last gravity mine, the one she deliberately damaged. Instead of creating a localized effect, It destabilized gravity across the entire hangar. Devourers, equipment, even small ships began floating chaotically. Some were crushed against the ceiling. Others were torn apart by conflicting gravitational fields. In the chaos, Sarah moved like a ghost. Her small size, which other species mocked, let her navigate the gravitational chaos better than the bulky devourers. She placed charges on critical supports, turning the hangar structure into a weapon. Chen, Frextor's voice over comms. Devourer reinforcements incoming. Full battalion. Sarah checked her remaining weapons. 3 nanocanisters, a handful of phasing rounds, 1 mystery device she hadn't identified. All units fall back to secondary positions, she ordered. Prepare for the hangar wall exploded, not from her charges but from outside. A massive Devourer command ship too large for the hangar smashed through the wall. Its weapons powered up, targeting the cadets' positions. Scatter, Sarah shouted. Plasma beams turned cover into slag. 3 cadets died instantly. Others ran, only to be cut down by precise fire. Sarah looked at the mystery device in her hand. No labels, no instructions, just a single activation switch. The explosion threw Sarah through the hangar wall and into the vacuum of space. Her emergency suit activated automatically, standard cadet equipment designed for brief exposure. She had maybe 10 minutes of air. Through the static-filled comm, she heard voices shouting her name. The command ship's death had broken the Devourer assault. Surviving enemies retreated to their remaining vessels, abandoning their mission in the face of losses they couldn't comprehend. Sarah tumbled through the void, watching the academy shrink below her. Her ribs screamed where plasma had burned through her armor. Blood floated in crimson spheres inside her helmet. Dead Chen, respond. The comm crackled with interference. She tried to answer but tasted copper. Internal bleeding. The explosion had done more damage than adrenaline let her feel. A shadow fell across her. One of the Devourer ship's engines powered for escape. For a moment she thought they'd shoot her, a final act of spite. Instead, the ship paused. Its sensors focused on her drifting form. Sarah raised her middle finger. An ancient human gesture the galaxy had learned to recognize. The ship jumped to hyperspace without firing. Ara, can you hear? Fraxter's voice, clearer now. She turned her head, searching. A shuttle approached, Academy markings, piloted by cadets who'd commandeered it during the fighting. Strong hands pulled her inside. The Vraxian's face appeared above her as her helmet came off. You insane human, he said. You actually did it. Did we win? Her voice was weak. They're retreating. All of them. Zara appeared beside him, medical kit in hand. The command ship's destruction broke their coordination. Without leadership, they're just animals again. Sarah tried to sit up. The world spun. No, not animals. They'll regroup. Learn from this. Come back stronger. Then we'll be ready, Commander Thresh said. He looked different. The rigid military bearing replaced by something harder, more practical. Thanks to you. Not me, Sarah corrected. All of us. Different species, different strengths. That's what they can't understand. Unity without uniformity. The shuttle docked with the Academy. Medical teams waited, but Sarah waved them off. Others first. I can walk. She couldn't, actually. But Vraxtor caught her before she fell, supporting her weight without making it obvious. The Academy was a disaster. Halls scarred by plasma fire, entire sections open to space, bodies being collected with military reverence. But it stood. They'd held. In the medical bay, as doctors worked to repair the damage, Sarah found herself surrounded by the cadets who'd fought beside her. Different species, different worlds, but something had changed. The divisions that seemed so important in classrooms meant nothing after you'd bled together. The final assessment, someone said quietly. It's supposed to be next week. Laughter, bitter and exhausted. I think we already took it, Zara observed. Commander Thresh entered, his burns freshly treated. The Alliance fleet is en route. They'll want debriefings, reports, explanations. He looked at Sarah. They'll want to know how a group of cadets defeated a Devourer assault force. Tell them the truth, Sarah said. We stopped thinking like soldiers and started thinking like survivors. That's not what they'll want to hear. Then tell them what they need to hear. That their perfect tactics, their refined strategies, their honorable warfare, none of it matters when extinction is on the table. Sarah's voice hardened. Tell them Mars Station held because we threw away the rule book. Tell them today held because we did it again. You'll be a hero, Thresh said. They'll want to promote you, fast-track your career. Sarah was quiet for a moment. I don't want to be a hero. I want to go back to class, and after this, you could write your own ticket. Any posting, any command. I have 6 months left at the academy. I intend to finish, she looked at the others. We all do. We've learned things in the last few hours that no classroom can teach, but there's still more to learn. You'll go back to sitting quietly, taking notes, never participating? Sarah almost smiled. Someone has to observe. Someone has to see what others miss. She gestured to the group around her. Besides, I think I'll have study partners now. The weeks that followed were strange. The academy rebuilt, classes resumed, life returned to something like normal. But not quite. Sarah still sat in the back of classrooms, still took notes, still rarely volunteered answers. But now, when she did speak, the room fell silent. Professors who'd dismissed her as unmotivated suddenly realized she understood their lessons better than they did. More importantly, the divisions between species began to blur. Vraxtor started a mixed species combat study group. Zara organized tactical discussions that threw out conventional doctrine. The Karathi sniper began teaching others about human military history, the dirty, ugly, effective parts that Alliance histories sanitized. The final combat assessment arrived. A massive exercise involving the entire graduating class, urban warfare, ship combat, strategic planning, everything they'd learned in 4 years of academy training. Sarah's assigned squad was diverse. The academy had learned something from recent events. As they gathered for briefing, Vraxtor grinned at her. So, quiet human, going to sit this one out too? Let us do all the work while you take notes? Sarah checked her weapon. Standard issue, nothing special. Regulation equipment only for official assessments. Maybe, she said. Depends on whether we're trying to pass or trying to win. What's the difference? This time Sarah did smile. Passing means following the rules. Winning means remembering that rules are just suggestions written by people who've never been desperate. The assessment began. Standard scenarios at first. Defend this position, assault that building, coordinate with allied units. Sarah's squad performed well, but not exceptionally. She gave quiet suggestions, small corrections, nothing dramatic. Then the scenario changed. Attention all units, the announcement came. Simulation parameters updated. Devourer-class enemies detected. Survival protocols engaged. The safe, predictable assessment became something else. The instructors had learned too. Sarah stood up. Formation change, she said quietly. Forget everything they taught us about engaging superior forces. Remember what actually works, and what's that? A nervous cadet asked. Whatever keeps us alive. The final phase was brutal. Simulated devourers with updated tactics incorporating lessons from the real attack. They moved differently, fought differently, adapted to conventional responses with terrifying speed. Academy squads fell one by one, overwhelmed by an enemy that had studied their playbook, all except Sarah's squad. They moved through the urban terrain like ghosts, striking from impossible angles using the environment as a weapon. When devourers adapted to one tactic, they switched to another. When standard equipment failed, they improvised. Sarah didn't lead from the front like traditional commanders. She stayed in the middle, watching everything, processing patterns, whispering adjustments. Her squad became an extension of her will, each member contributing their species' strengths while abandoning their predictable weaknesses. They won. Not just survived, won. The first perfect score in Academy history against Devourer-class opponents. At the assessment debrief, Admiral Keth of the Alliance fleet stood before the assembled cadets. Forearms crossed over his thorax, compound eyes surveying the room. The galaxy has changed, he said simply. The Devourer's return proves that our old ways of warfare are insufficient. We need new tactics, new thinking, new leaders. His gaze found Sarah. Some of you have already shown this capability. You've proven that unity doesn't require uniformity, that effectiveness matters more than tradition, that survival trumps honor. He paused. The Alliance needs officers who understand this. Who can teach it? Who can lead others to embrace what makes us strong, not as individual species but as a united front? Sarah felt the weight of expectation. The quiet cadet who never raised her hand was being asked to raise armies. Cadet Chen, the Admiral continued, your actions during the attack, your performance in this assessment, your unique approach to warfare, The Alliance wants to offer you immediate commission as a tactical instructor. You could shape the next generation of officers." The room held its breath. It was an unprecedented honor, a leap past years of traditional advancement. Sarah stood slowly. Every eye tracked her movement. "Sir," she said clearly, "I'm honored, but I have to decline." Gasps, whispers. Even the Admiral's composure cracked slightly. "May I ask why?" "Because I'm not done learning, sir. Every day here teaches me something new. Every classmate shows me a different perspective. Every professor, even the ones who thought I was failing, has something to offer." She looked around the room. "The Devourers will come back. When they do, we need leaders who've learned everything, not just combat. Diplomacy, engineering, science, culture, it all matters in war. You could learn while teaching." "No, sir. Teachers shape lessons to what they know. Students discover what they don't know exists." Sarah met his compound eyes. "Give me 6 months. Let me graduate properly. Then I'll serve however the Alliance needs." The Admiral considered. "And if we need you before then?" Sarah almost smiled. It was becoming a habit. "Then you know where to find me, sir. Back row, taking notes, not raising my hand." She paused. "Until someone starts shooting. Then I'll raise whatever's necessary." 6 months passed like days. The Academy rebuilt, stronger and stranger than before. Sarah's quiet revolution spread through the classes. Cadets who'd learned that textbook tactics were starting points, not endpoints. That survival required adaptation. That the greatest strength wasn't in their weapons, but in their willingness to abandon everything they thought they knew. Graduation day arrived with all the pomp the Galactic Alliance could muster. Admirals from a dozen species, dignitaries, reporters documenting the first class to survive a real combat scenario during training. Sarah stood with her classmates, wearing dress uniforms that felt strange after months of armor and blood. She'd ranked first in combat assessments, last in classroom participation, a paradox that drove the evaluation algorithms to error messages. Cadet Chen, Professor Zixatheta called during the individual recognition ceremony. The same crystalline instructor who dismissed her months ago now pulsed with different colors. Respect mixing with confusion. "Your academic record presents a unique challenge, sir. You've submitted the minimum required work for every assignment. Spoken only when directly ordered. By traditional metrics, you should barely graduate." He paused. "Yet your practical scores are unprecedented. Your tactical innovations have been added to Alliance doctrine. Your combat leadership saved the Academy. I had help, sir. Good squadmates. Yes, squadmates you trained. Tactics you developed. Leadership you demonstrated when it mattered." The professor's form flickered. "The Academy doesn't have a rank for what you are. So we're creating one." He gestured to Admiral Keth, who stepped forward carrying a case. "The Alliance military has always recognized excellence within established parameters," the Admiral said. "But sometimes excellence means breaking those parameters entirely. Cadet Chen, you've shown us that quiet observation can be more valuable than loud proclamation. That raising weapons matters more than raising hands." He opened the case. Inside lay insignia Sarah didn't recognize. Not standard military rank, but something new. "We're establishing a new position within the Alliance forces. Strategic observer, someone who watches, learns, and acts only when action is critical. Someone who teaches by example rather than instruction. Someone who reminds us that the most dangerous warrior is often the one who appears least threatening." Sarah stared at the insignia. "Sir, I just wanted to graduate normally." "Nothing about you is normal, Chen, accept it." The Admiral's compound eyes held amusement. "Your first posting is your choice. Any unit, any location. Where do you want to serve?" Sarah thought of her mother, still on Earth, still watching the stars. Of her father's grave on Mars, marked with a simple stone and bad poetry. Of the galaxy beyond, where devourers regrouped and planned, where new threats waited, where peace was always temporary. "Here," she said finally. "I want to stay at the Academy." Surprise rippled through the assembly. "As an instructor?" the Admiral asked. "As a student. Advanced studies. Xenopsychology, theoretical tactics, applied survival." Sarah met his gaze. "The Devourers adapted because they learned from us. We need to keep learning too. Not just from our successes, but from every failure, every loss, every moment when conventional wisdom got people killed. That's a waste of your talents." "No, sir. It's an investment." Sarah looked at her classmates. Vraxtor with his scarred scales, Zara with her newfound confidence, the Karathi sniper who'd learned to miss on purpose when missing meant living. Every student who comes through here is a potential force multiplier, not because we'll teach them to fight, but because we'll teach them to think, to question, to survive. The ceremony continued. Awards, recognition, assignments. Sarah's squad mates took prestigious postings, ship commands, elite units, strategic positions. She stood quietly in the back, as always, watching them step into their futures. Afterward, in the quiet of an empty classroom, she found a familiar desk. The same one where she'd sat through that first tactics lecture, taking notes while others competed for attention. You know, Braxtor's voice came from the doorway. I never understood why you sat here. Back corner, worst view of the displays. Best view of the class, Sarah corrected. You can see everyone, everything. Who's struggling, who's overconfident, who's ready to break. She ran her hand over the worn surface. My dad taught me that. Watch the watchers. Learn the learners. Understand people and you'll understand how they'll fight. And now? Will you keep sitting here? Sometimes. When I'm not teaching. Or learning. Or waiting for the next crisis. She looked at him. Where's your posting? Frontier Fleet. Scout Commander. They want someone who can think unconventionally. You'll do well. Because of you. Because of you, Sarah corrected. I just showed you what was already there. More classmates arrived. Zara, the Karathi, others who'd fought and bled together. They gathered in the classroom that had seemed so important once when grades and rankings mattered more than lives. The Devourers will come back, someone said quietly. Yes, Sarah agreed. Stronger, smarter, more adapted to our tactics. And we'll be ready. Sarah pulled out her notebook, not the Academy-issued one, but her father's journal. She opened it to a page near the end, his handwriting shaky from wounds that would soon kill him. Listen, she said and read. The enemy thinks we're weak because we're small, because we're young, because we don't have their strength or speed or natural weapons. They don't understand that humanity's greatest weapon has always been our refusal to accept defeat. We lose, we learn, we adapt. We fall, we get up. We die, but others remember and get better. That's not weakness. That's evolution in real time. That's survival distilled to its purest form. That's human. She closed the journal. We'll be ready because we'll never stop learning. Never stop adapting. Never accept that today's victory prevents tomorrow's defeat. Depressing philosophy for graduation day, Zara noted. Realistic, Sarah countered, but also hopeful, because every threat teaches us. Every enemy makes us stronger. Every loss adds to our collective knowledge. She stood. The Devourers thought they were hunting prey at Mars Station. They created predators. They thought they were breaking the Academy. They forged a new kind of alliance military. And next time they'll face what we've become. Not just humans who learn to fight dirty, but an entire galaxy that learned from us. Vraxians who think outside their honor codes. Karathi who snipe around corners. Bendathi who turn their life support into weapons. Unity without uniformity. Strength through diversity. The sun set through the Academy's repaired windows, casting long shadows across the classroom. Tomorrow they'd scatter across the galaxy, but tonight they were still cadets who'd learned the hardest lesson war could teach. One more question, Vraxtor said. If you could go back knowing what would happen, would you do anything differently? Speak up in class? Show them what you could do earlier? Sarah considered. No. The element of surprise only works once. Better to be underestimated until the moment when estimation matters. She smiled fully now, an expression her classmates had learned to recognize as slightly terrifying. Besides, raising hands is overrated. Let others talk. We'll act when it counts. They stayed until the security lights activated, sharing stories and plans and promises to remember. When they finally left, Sarah lingered, looking at the empty classroom one last time. Her comm unit chimed. A message from her mother. Saw the ceremony broadcast. Your father would be proud. Coming home for visit? Sarah typed back, soon, still have work to do here. Students to corrupt with unconventional thinking. That's my girl. Remember, never show your cards until the pot's worth winning, Sarah finished. I remember, Mom. Always. She shouldered her pack and headed for her new quarters. Not student dormitories, but not quite faculty either. Something in between, like everything about her. The Academy's lights dimmed for the night cycle. In a few hours, a new class of cadets would arrive, full of their species' pride and conventional wisdom. They'd sit in classrooms, compete for rankings, believe that war could be learned from books and simulations, and in the back row, a quiet human would take notes. She'd watch them stumble through lessons that seemed so important. She'd see who adapted and who clung to tradition. She'd identify the ones who understood that survival required more than strength or intelligence or technology. She wouldn't raise her hand. Not at first. Not until they needed to see that sometimes the most important lessons came from the students who looked least impressive. That sometimes the quiet ones were quiet, because they were listening to rhythms others couldn't hear. The pulse of violence beneath civilization's veneer. The whisper of threats not yet materialized. The echo of battles that taught through scars rather than scores. When the time came, and it would come, it always did, she'd show them what humans had learned in the dark tunnels of Mars. What the Academy had discovered when its halls ran red. What the galaxy needed to know if it wanted to survive the next evolution of warfare. Not through lectures or demonstrations or proud declarations, but by raising weapons when others raised doubts, by turning impossibility into inevitability, by being the quiet reminder that humanity's greatest strength had never been their bodies or their technology. It was their willingness to learn from the dead, adapt from the lost, and transform suffering into strength.